back in the news as has been for the last several years. In fact, since 2021, late 2021, after the pandemic, stuff happened and population growth obviously fell off a cliff because of immigration pretty much stopped because of the pandemic. Since then, we have rocketed up and now numbers are out. We're well over 1.2 million new people in this country. Very, very interesting. And what's been fascinating, Patrick, is the first part. I remember this clearly when this all started in early 2022, and it was all good in the hood. But it's amazing how the sentiment has changed pretty dramatically towards immigration as time goes on and as more and more people come into the country. I find the sentiment, there's a lot of talk right now about, is it too many people? Are resources being taxed? All this stuff. You've brought this up many times, but it's interesting how the sentiment on population growth is changing, but population growth does drive a big part of the real estate segment. So for investors, this is also a very good thing. So let's talk about that.
Well, these charts really show it. I mean, there's lots of these charts being shared, and you start to see just how dramatic it is when it's in this kind of a chart format. It's one thing to say, 1.3 million people, but when you actually see a visual of it and you see just how much growth we've had, it really is quite remarkable. I think there's another side of this, which is that, like rate increases, it was a lot really fast. And this is what's happening. This is the classic overreaction by government.
Well, excuse me for having enormous flaws that I don't work on.
And as much as we think about rate increases and, well, that's Bank of Canada. No, that's Bank of Canada in conjunction with the government, even though that's not supposed to be a thing. We know it is. And this is about population growth. This is really exactly what we talk about often, which is government overreacts, and this is the kind of result. So it's not that immigration is a bad thing. Both you and I are huge fans of immigration, but it's out of control. There's no method to the madness. So JG, our subscribers are actually ticking up. Yes, we're winning. So just a reminder, subscribers, and for those of you who are watching this, like, subscribe, comment. Let's get those algorithms growing so we can grow this channel. And just a reminder, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. JG, we can grow this channel.
Let's do it. Now, population is growing. You've talked a lot about, Patrick, and I don't have the chart in this deck, but we showed it many, many times, how there's a lot of people moving from essentially every province across Canada moving into Alberta. Alberta is the only province that has interprovincial migration that's going up. The rest have lower interprovincial migration. But that doesn't mean that the population of those provinces is going down. Ontario is a perfect example. Tons of people leaving Ontario for Alberta, but Ontario's population is up significantly. Look at this Q4 2023, 200,000 people extra in Ontario. These are big numbers. As you can see, we're going back to 2020 here. You can see this trend just is going up and up and up.
Well, and if you're in Ontario and you're listening to this, you see it. You see what's happening in your infrastructure. You see what's happening in rents and the lack of units for rent, for example, just because of the sheer volume of people moving into the province. And then ultimately what's happening is in Ontario, you're hoping that people move the hell out of the province. You need space. And listen, it's such a stress on the infrastructure. And I'm not, aside from healthcare, you look at even how much, bureaucratically our government has grown. I mean, never has it grown as much, yet our services are the slowest and I guess the least service that we've ever seen. So all to say this, a lot of people coming into Ontario, as one example, if you're living in Ontario, you know that to be true. And then they're moving and migrating into other provinces, primarily Alberta.
Here's an interesting graph, Patrick, showing the pretty much direct correlation between population and the rent CPI, which is the consumer price index or the price of rents, and how it goes up as population goes up. I found this chart to be quite fascinating because these two things are positively correlated, like 1-to-1.
Yeah, people are getting so revved up about it. Again, when you look at some of the individuals are complaining and blaming and all that. Got it, understood. I really do understand all of that. I have a ton of compassion and empathy for the people that are moving into this country, to the landlords that are having to deal with it, to the challenges that rent controls of Ontario and British Columbia are creating. But JG, you and I have been talking about this for 4 years. This is not rocket science. We talk about looking at the data, knowing that this is what happens when you have a population increasing. People have to live somewhere. They don't have credit. They don't have money. They're coming into a country they're not familiar with. They need a place to live. So, as investors, what do we always want to do? I'll say it again. We want to know that if we got this business called investing in real estate, where's our clients? We got a lineup of clients, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Now, we're going to actually challenge that theory in just a moment, but let's keep going down this train, because the question is, if we're getting, 1.2, 1.3 million new people recently that have come to the country, what is their status, so to speak, when they're coming in? We have the net permanent, we have the net non-permanent, we have the natural increase. We know the natural increase is going down. I mean, not enough babies are being made. I'm largely responsible for that. I've been trying for years, Patrick, but I haven't successfully done it yet. But if you look, really, the one that's off the charts is the net non-permanent. Can you define this for us, Patrick? Because then we're going to extend this conversation into student immigration, which is really under the microscope right now.
Well, it's interesting that, net non-permanent is almost, as much as we think it's definable, it's not definable. So it is exactly what it is. Non-permanent, those coming in on work visas. And in this case, there's international students that are here as part of this. There's temporary, as in, for example, I've got a couple of tenants that have come into the country. One was from Germany, one was from Japan. They're working for the university. They literally have work visas for a couple of years. They're both doctorates and they're doctors. They've got their PhDs. And so they're working for the university, in this case, University of Alberta. The point is this, is that all qualifies in that non-permanent resident. They're not here, and they're not searching, by the way, they're not looking for permanent residency. Now, then there, of course, is the permanent residents, those that are coming and they have visas and they're actually putting their applications in for citizenship. So that's the fundamental overall breakdown. But as we'll look at in a couple of charts, there's some, I guess we'll call it ambiguity in what that really makes up.
Ambiguity. That's amazing, Patrick. You use the word ambiguity and the government tracking ambiguity in the same sentence. I'm fascinated by this. But let's speak to student immigration, Patrick, because recently this came out, interesting headline that talks about how there's nearly 200,000 international students that are here with a student visa that have no record of going to college or university whatsoever in Canada. And these are the kinds of things that are getting a whole lot of attention right now.
Well, it is, and that's because what the government has done is they finally tapped the brake and they said, okay, we're going to slow down international students coming into the country. It's out of control. And of course, they're saying that, but the government's actually blaming the universities and colleges, which I'm sure they are somewhat responsible for that. So they're putting it out there, come in, get the education, and then it becomes a cash cow for these universities and these colleges. And what's happening is that students are coming in, they've got no place to live. They're paying as much as 4 times as much. So an international student there's lots of stories of paying as much as 4 times for the same education that a resident of Canada pays. And then they're not even getting the quality of education that they are expected or that is normally delivered. I mean, it's such a controversial issue. Finally, the government wakes up, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, it's hitting mainstream media. There is an election coming up, not nearly soon enough. So what do? They have to react to it. And as government does, they react. So end of the day, they're cutting back on international students, but to the point of that other slide, well, international students, they're overstated by 200,000. So based on this, their own data shows, Stats Canada's own data says, well, there's 200,000 that came in as international students, but they haven't signed up for any university or any college. So where are those 200,000 international students?
So right now, this cap, it's a 2-year cap the federal government's announced, and they're saying they're going to cap it at 360,000 undergraduate study permits for 2024, which is the current year we're in, which is 35% of what they did in 2023, Patrick, if I read this correctly. So this means, now here's my question to you. Do you expect that next year, overall immigration is going to come down significantly? Because student immigration is a big part of the overall immigration coming into the country, a big part, like a huge part. So, I mean, if 2/3 of the student immigration we've been used to is not going to come, we may see a significant decrease here in immigration, in total immigration. Do you expect that?
Well, I think we got a couple things going on. Now, we don't have a slide for it, but in behind, and it's not anecdotal. There is data supporting it, which is to say that there are a lot of people who have come to Canada who are now leaving Canada. When you look at India, for example, there's a lot of people that have come in from India and Asia overall. But ultimately, what's happening is those same individuals are getting on YouTube and going,
"Don't come here. This doesn't work. You can't afford to live. You're not going to get the job you think of."
Now, you say, well, what's the big deal about that? Go check out some of those YouTube channels. They're getting 1 million plus views. So they're having an impact. And what we are starting to see is people are going, they're coming and they're leaving because they can't get a job. They can't afford to live here. It is a oversell because the Canadian government's pitching these deals in other countries. So come on over to Canada. We're awesome. Get a job, have a great lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. The point is that's another part of it. Will the government cut back? Sorry to interrupt. Will the government cut back? I think they're going to be forced to. Again, squeaky wheel gets the grease. We've got some, definitely with an election coming up, they've got to start to plan ahead. If they don't, I think it's just going to, I don't know what's going to happen. Riots in the streets. It's the heat's getting turned up.
Now, before we terminate on this topic, Patrick, I just one thing I want to put out there is, we've just finished saying how important population is to real estate and how it drives real estate values and it drives rent specifically. I mean, we have charts where we've shown the correlation between rents. Like, look at this chart here. There's a direct correlation between rents and non-resident permanent growth. At least that's what's been happening in the last several years. And even throughout, by the way, you can see the correlation. The point is this, Patrick, if we make these kinds of moves and whether they're right or wrong, can we expect and should we expect population to come way down? And if it does come way down, is that going to affect real estate values? And is that going to slow real estate down even more than what it has been slowed down? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think even if they shut the population growth down today, we still have time that there's got to be an absorption rate that happens. In other words, we've still got more people wanting to buy homes, wanting to live in Canada that aren't, we've gone from an average of 2.2 people per home to now they're saying 4.4 or 4.5. So more than double is what it's going to require to accommodate everybody that's in this country today. So if they cut it back, if they cut it back for an extended period or they cut it off, if they cut it back, even if they cut it in half, we will not keep up on the building side of it. And certainly, so think about this, JG, I know, we're seeing it. Builders have tapped the brake. Some of them have just hit the brakes hard. They're not building anything. Existing projects have been put on hold even. So now what's going to happen is that, let's say they cut population back, the interest rates come down, they start building again. There's a whole lag for that's got to get caught up. So this within the system of real estate, as much as it feels like things fall off the cliff when you come from a peak of 2022 on a pricing, for example, to where we are today, it feels like it just changed overnight. It really didn't. It took some time for that to happen. It takes that 12, 18, or even 24 months for things to happen. So as rates come down, as builders get back in the game, even if we cut our population growth in half, it's not enough to keep up.
Love it. Great conversation about population, immigration, student immigration, and real estate. Gosh, my aim is precise today.
You're on point. The Michael Jordan of sticky notes right there. If you like what you learned here, go to the description below and subscribe for our free Insiders newsletter, where you can also stay up to date for our upcoming events and our courses.
If you want to see more stuff like this, click here. If you want to see the entire show, click there.